That doesn't really work, does it? Did you try? Shouldn't it be a bit more? Or this? This? Yes. Better? What do you think?
Amadeus is a film that came out in 1984 that's directed by Milos Forman. So, Amadeus is a $50 picture request from no other than Perry Perez. And I was ecstatic that Perry requested this film to me because this is a film that both Perry and my cousin Eric have just been raving on about for at least over a year now. And just to cut right to the chase, I love this film to death. This film has received a lot of praise from a lot of people. It won 8 Oscars, which is pretty insane. And after watching it, I can say that I completely understand why it did. Because this film is absolutely phenomenal. And the only thing that I knew about this film going into it was that it's basically a biopic on Mozart. And after watching it, I honestly wouldn't even describe this film as a biopic on Mozart because that's too conventional of a description for this film. Because to me, this is the film that uses Mozart as the historical figure that he is to tell a compelling story about envy, about art, about art's place in society, about class, about religion, about humanity in general. This film tackles so many different themes and explores them through its main characters so incredibly well. As I mentioned, this story is quite compelling, and it's because the characters are so compelling and they're embodied incredibly well. F. Murray Abraham in this film, I've seen him in a lot of movies. Personally, my favorite character that F. Murray Abraham has played in film is Omar in Scarface. And it's crazy because he was in Scarface a year before Amadeus, so he was just playing characters in back-to-back bangers. But he won an Oscar for his role here, and I loved his character to death in this film. I think the Oscar that he won is well-deserved. I don't know, I'm not aware of everybody who was nominated in that category that year, but just from watching this film alone, I can say that it is a well-deserved Oscar because he plays such an important character. His character is arguably a more important and vital character in this film than Mozart, who's played by Tom Hulce, who also did a phenomenal job, but I'll get to that in a second. But his character is so important and compelling because he plays a composer that goes by the name of Antonio Salieri. And again, I'm not sure if everything that's represented in this film is historically accurate, so I'm not here to comment on that at all, but just in terms of a filmmaking standpoint, his character is compelling because he's such a bastard, he's such a backstabbing snake of a character, but at the same time, I related to his character more than anybody in this film. And I think a lot of people are going to feel the same because his character deals with such an existential issue that a lot of people in this world deal with. He is not dealing well and coming to terms with the fact that there is somebody out there that is 10 times better than him. And that person in this film is obviously Mozart. And it's a shame because Salieri himself, he's successful. He's high up in the chain of classist power in this film. And he's basically made it as a musician, but he just cannot shake the fact that Mozart is doing everything that Salieri has already done except 10 times better and with half of the effort. Mozart comes around and he is just with ease elevating any material that he thought was great before, and it is just blowing his mind, and he is in an existential crisis. He does not know how to come to terms with this fact. It's one of those things to where you can either hate the person who is better than you at what you love to do, or you can just come to terms with it and use that as inspiration. But obviously he doesn't go the more humble route. He can't help but feel such bitterness and such anger and hatred, and that's what I really loved about his character, because to me, it's more than envy and more than jealousy. His character has so much inner rage in him, and I think it's because of the fact that he feels like with Mozart existing, his purpose in this life is completely pointless. And a lot of people feel that way, but when you throw religion in the mix, which is something that I really loved out of this film as well, it just makes it even more worse of a crisis, because then you're questioning why God is doing everything. You view everything as a test. You view everything as a flaunt. Every single thing that happens in your life that you just don't understand and makes you feel worthless, you view as some sort of divine testament to something. And to me, that religious element is something that really heightens that rage and heightens that frustration throughout this film, that causes a character to be such a weasel and betrays Mozart in so many different ways. And to me, it's everything revolving around his character that makes this film so incredibly compelling, and is the reason why I did fall in love with it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are so many other aspects of this film that are fantastic. I mean, it goes without saying that the set decoration and the production design and the costume design and the way that all of Mozart's operas are depicted in this film are incredible. Like, all that stuff is, in terms from a production standpoint, is just out of this world fantastic as well. But what makes the story and the themes and the characters so interesting, I feel like, revolves around Antonio Salieri's character. But I also love the way that Tom Hulce plays Mozart in this film as well. I love the depiction of Mozart in this film in general, because Mozart is somebody that we obviously know is just a true prodigy, someone that is incredibly talented, just like almost seems from birth. And obviously, like, you need to be trained and brought up to have this level of skill, but it's just something that some people pick up instantly and just ride with it so incredibly well. And Mozart was one of those people who just was raised learning this and just rode the wave so phenomenally and pushed so many boundaries when it comes to what could be done with music and orchestra and opera. But all the way his character is depicted in this film, because it shows you how much of a personality that he had. Again, I don't know if it's accurate, but just the way that he's depicted in this film shows that he's such like an eccentric and honest person. He has this iconic and just entertaining laugh in this film that you just can't help but smile and also laugh at. And I love that addition to his character, because it's one of the many things revolving around his character that shows that even though he is so incredibly talented in playing these, he's just finessing all of these musical notes and creating these just magnum opuses of music, he doesn't really mesh well with the kind of hoity-toity and uppity elite class that is associated with these high works of art. And so whenever Mozart and, these higher elite figures are in the same room together, he's always viewed as this kind of unprofessional, hedonistic kid. But in reality, he's just a human being that loves the art of music and is one of the most treasured prodigies ever known. But one tragic truth that is conveyed in this film that I thought was so incredibly done, it's compelling, and it's thought-provoking, and again, it's just an honest portrayal of this particular theme. And it has to do with how society kind of sinks its teeth into these true talents of the world. Because if he's not being betrayed every second by people that he trusts, he's being sucked dry. He's somebody that's being constantly worked and is essentially a slave to his own talents. Because the only reason why tragedy strikes with Mozart in this film is because he's constantly being sabotaged, or he's just being worked to death. He has trouble finding work because of people lying about him. And if he does find work, it's more lower tier work, and it's being played in venues that people don't really appreciate the artistry for what it is. And I think that's such a sad but true and honest depiction of what artists deal with in society. Even artists today in America and really anywhere else, because they're constantly being exploited and constantly being sabotaged, but at the same time are still expected to just keep like pumping out their art. And it's just such an unfortunate reality that we live in. And if the entire thing about him being buried in a mass grave is true, that is absolutely disgusting. I mean, that is despicable and a disgrace to mankind. I will say one small thing about this film, and it's the fact that somewhere in the second act, nearing the third act, we get a lot of these depictions of Mozart's operas. And don't get me wrong, as I said, in terms of the production design and the costume and just the overall presentation and the look of everything, it's great stuff. But at the same time, we do get a lot of it at some point, and there are times where I feel like we don't really need to see this. It's not really doing much for the story. It's not really even doing much for the characters, and I definitely feel some of that stuff could have just been cut out. But we are only talking about 5 minutes of film in a film that's 3 hours long. So, very small and borderline nitpicky stuff. And I did watch the director's cut, which I believe is around 20 minutes longer than the theatrical version. And I'm not sure of everything that was cut out of the director's cut in order to push it out in theaters, but I'd still watch the director's cut any day of the week over the theatrical version, just because of the fact that it seems pretty dramatic to cut out over 20 minutes of this film, because I'm only complaining about maybe 5 minutes or so. So I would still, any day of the week, pick the director's cut. So I'm going to give Amadeus a solid 9 out of 10. I do plan on revisiting this film many times throughout my life, so who knows, maybe on rewatch it'll be a 10, I'll just consider it perfect. But we'll see. Either way, I think that this film is insanely entertaining, incredibly compelling, and I'm so glad that Perry recommended this, and I'm glad that people in general have been pushing me to watch this film, because I do think that it deserves all the praise that it gets. Well, that's all I got to say about Amadeus. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.